Welcome to CrossPlatform podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I'm Augusto Pinaud,
And I'm Art Gelwicks.
and in this episode, we are going to cover again the new issue of the week. And we have basically two news. We are going to be talking about a certain hotel chain that converts their Windows PC to Chrome OS, and the other because of a ransomware attack. And we are going to be talking about a couple, an Asus Zenbook and the Lenovo Thinkbook Plus that were announced on CES 2022. But let's begin by the hotel change that went and decide to leave Windows to go and talk about Cloud OS. That's a interesting and aggressive decision to ransomware.
Yeah, to lay the groundwork, what they did is instead of replacing the hardware, they installed something called Cloud Ready,
Mhm.
which was a third-party developed solution for quite some time, and then Google actually bought them and has integrated them into their company. And what Cloud Ready does is it allows you to download an operating system, load it onto a flash drive, and install it over top of the installation you have on your machine that would normally be Windows. Well, this replaces it. So it's basically a side by side. You can configure, I've done it on a number of machines. You can do it so you could dual boot if you really wanted to, but that's not what these guys are doing. They're doing this to replace the Windows operating system, I'm sure for a number of different aspects of what Cloud Ready brings to the table. One, it is fairly bulletproof. We're talking about a or a Chrome OS based operating system. So you don't have the normal Windows virus issues that you would have to deal with. Ransomware attacks focus on virus implementations because it's the virus that goes through, encrypts your hard drive, encrypts your storage, and now you can't get into your content. And therefore, the ne'er-do-wells are turning around and saying, give us money and we'll decrypt everything. Well, one of the positions that Microsoft takes around that is, well, use cloud-based storage and we can protect you. Well, if you have cloud-based storage and you have machines that are operating in a way that just aren't going to allow themselves to run the virus, the old mindset would be, well, you would use a Mac the same way because it's a different type of platform. But something like this, they didn't have to swap out the hardware. They didn't have to change any of their physical infrastructure
Correct.
to be able to implement this. And now they've got something that is much more easily maintained, much more robust.
Not
And
only
it
that, their hardware now will last them much longer. So,
exactly.
what was fascinating for me, the hotel in question is called Nordic Choice Hotels. There are over 200 properties. So, we're not talking about a small, chain, 5 room. We're talking about a significant solution. Okay, we're talking about, the article talks about 3,500 machines. So it's an interesting implementation. But the best part is they implement Cloud Ready and we're ready, back live working in 48 hours. The number that the article brings is around 250 machines in 48 hours. That's an impressive job.
Mhm.
And as you said, now they they did not need to go and put new hardware. They got the licenses, and I on anything but idle as well as on productivity cast, I have talked about Chromium and I have talked about Cloud Ready. Even for a longest time I had a dead Surface that had Cloud Ready. The hard drive died and they did not replace it. So I put a SD card and run Cloud Ready. It was a Surface 2 until basically it was time to replace it. Okay.
Mhm.
So this is a really fascinating story because we are seeing more and more of these ransomware attacks. And the problem I see with this is it's going to be great for Google, awesome for Cloud Ready,
Mhm.
not so much for Windows.
Well, I look at it from one perspective. I mean, Granted, we've replaced a lot of machines with cloud-ready based systems between the two of us. We know what they work, but it still doesn't change the fact it's still Chrome OS. It does have a ceiling in functionality. It does have a ceiling in capability. And one of the things, even though it is prolonging the life of older machines, well, keep in mind, they're older machines. They're not as
True.
fast. They're not as robust. They don't have that power and capability. So I wouldn't, in a situation like what we're talking about here, deploying 200 machines across what is basically, in many cases, first line worker type configurations,
Hmm.
this Chrome OS based solution is really viable. Would I want to deploy this across, say, a corporate office through the accounting department, through the marketing department, things? I would have to think a lot longer and a lot harder about doing that.
Agreed, but what we
It's
are looking in
possible,
here,
but
it is possible, and it's now. There are two things we're seeing that may not look connected. One is, and we discussed this already before, how we are starting to see high-end, really powerful Chrome OS machines. Okay,
mhm,
so if you start getting things like Cloud Ready, things like Chromebooks into corporate, okay, it is at the end of the day, corporate move on dollars and cents. That's
right.
it. Okay. If you find something cheaper than Windows that can give us more return on investment, that's what we are going to invest in the general lines. That these case studies, you're not talking about a mom pop and shop. You're talking about you know significant amount of 200 properties, 3,500 machines. Now you pass the small business level.
Mhm.
You're in a mid range. If you start seeing this in the mid range, now you will be, for Chrome and for the hardware builders, will start getting interesting to really push this. And the reality is, if you put this and you move out of Microsoft into a Google platform, you will get the Meet, the calendar, the email, and
Well,
everything.
okay, now here's the thing, though, is you don't have to move out of the Microsoft platform. That's the key of this. For this to be truly successful, especially in a business environment, you have to remember that just about everything you do can still be done in the cloud. You can
True.
use Microsoft 365 as your primary center. Then basically all you need is a browser-based system. So Chrome OS becomes the thin clients to access the cloud-based solutions. Well, that's great. Then
I did not thought about that. Okay.
you just want a solid, robust, thin client. You don't really care what else it does because you're not asking it to do anything. You're asking it to provide a solid, monitored, managed browser, which is basically all it's getting. Anything beyond that, they don't really care that much. And Microsoft's movements to make things more readily available from the app and browser level, and that's actually one of the tips of the week I'm going to share, is this idea of making these applications almost separate from the OS so that it works regardless of location. So yeah, don't get me wrong. I think it's a very viable option. I don't know that Microsoft is necessarily sweating their market share, but I think from the perspective of somebody making these choices, creating a hybrid environment that involves Chrome OS machines and Windows machines is that much more of an option nowadays. And especially if you're trying to mitigate situations like this hotel's mitigating, where they're trying to protect their data to avoid these ransomware situations.
Mhm.
There's options on both sides of the platform discussion.
So the next article we have came from Gizmodo, is the Asus laptop Zenbook 17. And I agree with the article. The article says, well, Asus called this a laptop, but really it's a massive tablet. And it's basically a 17-inch tablet that can fold in half, and you can use it as a tablet, as a monitor, as a PC, or even as a little thing. I love this concept. I really love the idea of having that massive tablet that you can fold in half and work
Mhm.
the other way and have the external keyboard.
It
The
is a
only defect
facet.
I find so far is that it uses Windows.
It is a fascinating design.
It is.
I think from the standpoint of how they've got it built, the fact that you can use it in basically a monitor configuration, you can take it
Mhm.
down, fold it not fully in half, but partially in half in a clamshell design where you wind up with a virtual keyboard, or you can use the physical keyboard that they provide that actually sits on top of the virtual keyboard. Uh, it's an interesting proof of concept. The other thing that I find interesting, though, excuse me, is that it's an OLED screen. OLED screens are gorgeous. I mean, they are beautiful because basically from the tech side of it, if there's a black pixel on the screen, it's because nothing's turned on. It's about as rich a black as you can get for contrast and for visibility. So to have a portable, foldable OLED screen that you can then slip into a bag, take somewhere, set up as a separate display, use it as a touchscreen, use it as a tablet, it has a lot of interesting opportunities. Cons, concerns that I have about it, I would worry about durability. I would worry about, as we see with the Samsung foldables, the development of a seam across the axial part of where the fold occurs. There's lots of little things. This is still very new, but I think it's also extremely intriguing. Personally, I would love to see a company, one of the screen manufacturers, produce a device like this that doesn't actually have the computer guts to it, but you use something like, say, a Samsung DeX connected to it. Then all of a sudden you've got all the pieces you need without it having to be built into a system that couldn't be easily upgraded. You've got yourself on quiet there, Mr. Augusto.
I
We want to hear
apologize.
you talk. We want to hear you
Honestly,
espouse your wisdom to us.
I don't know if there's wisdom, but this is a beautiful, beautiful device. There is no, I didn't find any information on price, but I'm sure it's not going to be on the
Oh, it's
budget
got to be
aspect of
it's got to
this.
be expensive as all get out. You're right. I haven't seen any pricing on it either, but and it also may be one of those concept pieces where it's like, oh yeah, this is an idea. The only looking at the screen renders, the only thing that I don't know that if I like, in one position where it's folded in half, it almost looks like there's a display on the back of the monitor. I'm not sure how that would work or what the purpose of that would be, but it's a thing.
I don't think that. I think that's just design. I don't think that's a.
Could
I
be
think
just design. Okay.
yeah. I don't think it's an actual thing. But then our other laptop is the Lenovo Thinkbook Plus, and we talk about it in Anything But Idle this week, and let's discuss it. And then I'm going to bring the comment that Ray bring to Ray Sidney Smith bring when I show this concept. I was excited mostly because I work with an iPad and an iPad mini on the side. And I say, oh, great. My iPad will extend on the top on the size of the keyboard, and then I will have my iPad mini on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
My complaint to this is that iPad mini, or that screen for that matter, 7-inch screen on the keyboard, it's not removable. And it will
Right.
be so awesome to have that device in there that I can use and then push a button and take it with me instead of taking the rest.
So we're back to that design concept that I've talked about before, where you have either your iPad mini or your Samsung smartphone or whatever dock in using a USB-C connector, and it ports up to the display, and you have the keyboard, and the smarts are in that part of the device.
Mm-hmm.
Now, leaving that behind, just looking at this thing that they've created, it's interesting. It's interesting to me to have that screen in that position. But in thinking about how it works, and just, if you put your hands on your own keyboard, one of the things that you'll find is you're going to constantly be overlapping where that little tablet is because it's embedded into the keyboard. Second, you wind up with a fairly small keyboard, even a 17-inch wide display, which is what this thing is. That's the size of the machine that my wife uses. And even at that size, if you condense that keyboard down, it's still going to be a little bit cramped.
I think
but
the
the
keyboard may be
functionality,
fine, but the comment that got me out on that episode was the moving sideways to work, because now you're not going to be, if you look at your computer, you tend to sit and work on the center of the screen. For this computer to work, you need to work on the left of the screen.
Well, I don't know that I would agree with that being an issue. And the reason why I say
Well,
that is I'm sitting here right now in a configuration where I have 3 displays. So if I'm working on my left-hand display, my keyboard is way offset to the right of that display. If I'm working on my right display, it's
but
way
they're not
offset to the
laptops.
left.
And
No,
and
but I don't think we're talking
I
about
test
something
a
functionally that's
Dell,
different.
a Dell 17-inch Dell with a numeric pad, okay, and the mouse pad is not on the center of the machine; it's towards
Hmm.
the left, and it is the most dysfunctional laptop I have tested
Yeah,
because of that.
I don't know
It
that
bothers
that
me a
would
lot.
bother me at all. It's just where the keyboard happens to be in relation to things. Um, I mean, if you think about a lot of the older design keyboards where they've added a numeric keypad, then yeah, things wind up getting skewed anyway. And we've dealt with more bizarre keyboards in the past. I mean, think back in the day to the old IBM Butterfly keyboard. I mean, we've dealt with bizarre implementations. I don't know that this would
True, true.
necessarily derail it. For me, the concept of the tablet embedded or the screen embedded in there while providing functionality, I don't know if it necessarily provides enough functionality to warrant the weight and the battery drain and everything else that's tied to it. It's neat, but if anything, I would actually like to see the keyboard long or move down further, maybe the display in a 2x3 or a 3x2 format, and put a small screen across the top of where the keyboard is. Much bigger than the old Touch ID on the Apples. Something maybe like a phone width
Mhm.
across that space to be able to put things onto and message prompts and things like that. I mean, if you feel like you have a need to have that at your keyboard level, something like that I think would probably be more functional. But I do believe that both of these are indicative of something we're going to see more so this year and in the coming years is dual screen laptops. We've
Mhm.
seen the benefit of having dual screens, multiple monitors. We were talking about this in the pre-show about having multiple monitors set up, especially portable monitors now, which are sub $200 in many
Yeah, they're
cases.
they're getting really, really cheap.
They're getting very inexpensive. They're very easy to set up. I have one here right now. It's being powered off a USB-C. It's an HDMI connection, works beautiful. It's the same size as my primary laptop monitor. It's great. And I can fold it up into something that is no thicker than my laptop and slip it in the same bag. So I think we're going to start to see a lot of these configurations start to come. And I
And that
think
will be
either,
interesting. I understand. My main device is an iPad, and because of that, I don't use the multiple screens, because for me it's multiple devices, because
mhm,
it's way more practical for what I do for work. Unless I'm working consulting for certain clients, in which I do something different, in which that second monitor will be, and that's what we were discussing. Is, well, I can now put a cheap monitor in there and connected it 2 or 3 times. Will make a difference? Do I need it? I don't know. It is on the someday maybe list for now, but we will see.
mhm.
Well, and with this we get to the end of our news section. Follow us where you like to listen podcast. Like us, subscribe to us, or leave us a review. You can also interact with us on personalproductivity.club. We have a channel there for cross-platform. We are Augusto Pinaud and Art Gelwicks, and see you next time from your favorite device.